This is a disclaimer. This episode may contain graphic descriptions of crime and criminal activity. It may not be suitable for listeners under the age of 18 or for those who may find the descriptions as disturbing. Listeners' discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to this special episode of Krime KE podcast. My good name is Stila Juma and I am very grateful that you took the time to listen to me today. In this week's episode, we actually talk about femicide. This is also the last episode of the season and the last episode of the year, so let's get right into it. About a month ago, I was speaking to my friend and I was telling her that I am wrapping up this season of the podcast and I intend to take a 2-month break from that. And her response to me was that she realized that this was the most graphic season of the podcast and she was hoping that I was taking care of my mental health. And this made me sit back and actually look at some of the stories that I have covered this season, and I realized that women are being murdered in very brutal ways. It is almost like the perpetrators do not see the humanity in these women. Look at someone like Ivy Wangeshi, who was hacked to death in broad daylight with a metallic axe. Rebecca Cheptegei was literally set on fire. Like, what kind of person does that to a fellow human being? Now, according to a report on femicide in Kenya by Africa Data Hub, stabbing and hacking are the most dominant methods used by perpetrators of femicide. The report also goes on to say that the majority of femicides are committed by intimate partners or family members. The majority of femicides are committed by intimate partners or family members. So as much as people like to say that it is because women are greedy and want quick money, Airbnb this, Airbnb that, research still shows that they are not safe even at home. Especially at home. 72% of femicides occur in the home. Last week, we talked about Sheila Wagesha. She was literally stabbed to death in her own bedroom, allegedly by her boyfriend. Monica Kimani was killed in her home. Sheila Lumumba, Rose Soila, Naomi Chabet, all of them were murdered at home. Now, according to Africa Data Hub, and we can also see in the stories covered this season, most of the cases of femicide are preceded by violence and systematic abuse. A case like that of Agnes Tirop, very preventable. If there were systems in place to support her when she needed to leave an abusive marriage, I believe she would be alive today. Tiffany Wanyonyi, a police officer in an abusive marriage, her father had to be the one to report her abuse, and still nothing was done. Now, Kenya has the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act, which was enacted in 2015, and it recognizes physical, emotional, economic, and psychological abuse, things like stalking. This act provides a very comprehensive legal framework for the protection of victims of abuse. It recognizes violence against men, women, and children, and it also allows anyone to report abuse on behalf of the victim. It also allows victims to seek protection orders from the courts and provides for compensation of victims and even the provision of counseling services. And it is truly heartbreaking that even with such an act in place, the enforcement is very weak because victims are often shamed even just for reporting, sometimes even by the police who are supposed to help out. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this episode is the media coverage of femicide stories. There are very few stories focused on holding perpetrators to account, and most of them are almost trading the line between victim sympathy and victim blaming. A good example was when reports of Starlet Wahu and Rita Waini's murders were being reported. I mean, even Airbnb had to respond because the narrative being pushed was that going to an Airbnb was somehow causing the deaths of these women. I mean, blame everything and everyone else but the perpetrator, right? Now, according to a report titled Media Framing of SGBV, and Femicide in East Africa, Professor Nancy Booker writes about how it is important to humanize victims of gender-based violence. The report found that only 11% of coverage of GBV actually amplified survivor voices, which is unfortunate because media framing shapes and sometimes even distorts the public understanding of femicide and SGBV. Why do I keep saying that? Femicide and SGBV. Africa Data Hub says that the rise in femicide is attributed to a complex interplay of cultural, social, and economic factors. For example, when Agnes Tirop was murdered, several athletes came out to speak about how, even though they are the ones practicing and running marathons, some of them do not receive the money that they are paid. The cash is paid to their husband's bank account, and that is economic abuse. Africa Data Hub says that at the root of the problem is the need to tackle toxic masculinity. They suggest the promotion of education around gender equality and conflict resolution, and also mental health support. It is clear that we still have a very long way to go in dealing with femicide, but I would like to think that all hope is not lost. We have come to the end of this season of Krime KE podcast, and I want to sincerely thank you for listening, commenting, suggesting cases, and even just engaging with me. I would never do this without you, so I want you to know that your support is very much appreciated. And with that, we close this season and the year altogether. The next episode of the podcast will be available on 15th of January 2026. For now, you can find the podcast on social media for updates on the cases. You can support Krime KE podcast by sharing this episode with your friends so that we can get a larger community to listen to these cases. On TikTok and Instagram, we are at krime.ke. On Facebook, you can find me at Ajuma Millicent. I have tagged the podcast contact information and social media pages on the show notes of this episode so that it is easier for you to reach out if you have any feedback on the podcast. We also have a WhatsApp number, which I have put on the show notes of this episode. You can send in voice notes, suggest cases, and give feedback. And now, with all that said and done, do not forget to give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and catch the next episode of Krime KE podcast in January next year. But until then, stay safe and happy holidays to you and your family.